Welcome, everybody, to the show. This is Chronic Living Show number 155 for January 8th, 2024. Please let me know if you can actually hear me, because we had some technical difficulties before the show, and I think it's working, but it's hard to tell from here. So hopefully we will have a great show tonight, even though we are up against the national championship college football game. So that I expect the numbers to be a little lower than usual here. But I would like to thank everybody for coming out. If you are multitasking this evening, I will not mind. So we've got in the pipeline, we're going to finish clip an End of Empire probably in the next 30 minutes because I did not hear. I apparently we're loud and clear, so that's great. Apparently, I did not get anything done clipping this between shows. I haven't touched it since last week, so I was like, screw it, I'm not going to overthink it. I got like 3/4 of a counter sheet left to go. And then we are drinking, same type of deal. We're not overthinking this either. Basil Hayden's bourbon. It's pretty good. Once again, we are doing it on the rocks because I don't really like it neat. All good. So the Logitech app is not recognizing the microphone. That's the problem. Apparently it's fine, but that's what's happening. So hopefully the volume is okay as well. We've got some new intro music this evening too. And we'll be doing that for the next. I had some new show intros prepped up for the new year. So we'll be going through the rest of those for another couple of. Make sure everybody's being cool in the chat here. Another couple of things. 116 people here already. That's pretty good. So our topic tonight is scenarios versus campaigns, and we're going to get into that a little bit. Is it an either-or decision? What use is the scenario if your position is going to be that, as Marty Sample has already pointed out, campaign or bust, a position with which I do have some sympathy. But nevertheless, we have some interesting things to explore there. I'm going to highlight, I had this prepped, so I don't have, I'll pull it up here, but there is as news, I'll get to this a minute early. There is a Call of Cthulhu bundle of holding right now I am going to throw the link into the chat if anybody's interested in this. You can get it. There's like a $5, a $15, and a $25 bundle here for anybody who's into the Call of Cthulhu thing, and who is lined up to play in the campaign that we're going to start in a few months. Might be a great idea to get in on that if you don't have something already available. And emails on that schedule will be going out to the affected persons at some point in the next couple of days. I just had a busy weekend, which we'll talk about also in a second. Before we get into any further stuff, let me first of all pull the banner up. And I want to give a big shout out to Jeff Benedict, Ben Tate, and Joseph Syverson, who are here or back as patrons, all at the swordsman level. So thank you, folks. I really appreciate the support. And if you haven't done so already, please thumbs up the video and subscribe to the channel. And there's a bunch of links to do supporty type things in the video description. So check all those things out. And I'm going to mention that, but I'll talk about that in a minute. In the meantime, let's say hello to Bayonet Brant from the Armchair Dragoons, Bill Simone, Board Gaming Geezer, Brent McKay, Brian Foley, Carl Fung, Chad Kennedy, Charles Lenny, Daniel Silverthorne, David Imperato, Gronyard Rich, the legend himself, Fucko, who's going to be the topic of a YouTube short in the immediate future, Jason W., Jeff Beeler, congratulations, Jason W., Jeff Beeler, Joe Faust, Joe Okabayashi, Joe Perez, Joel, John Longshore is in the house, John C. from the sunny Philippines, John Clark, Jonathan Dyer, Carl Creeder from the War Game Boot Camp, Lee Grant Manders, Mark G., Mark McNair, Mark Hodgkinson, Marty Sample is here, Matt Davidson, Meandering Mike, Michael Schmaus, Michael Simon, Nordic Maelstrom, Panzer Division Lair, Patrick of Patrick's Tactics and Tutorials. Welcome back to the show. Paul Sin, Perfidious Albion, Pizza Frenzy Man, Rob Johnson, Roger Hemseth, Sean Torno, Stacking Limit is in the house. Steve the NPC, Stigler is here. The Command Tent, Vicky, welcome back to the show. William Boardman, William Bird, and Wolf Dog. I also want to give out a shout out to Da Wendnard, who was kind enough to send me a copy of Eastwind Rain, which I did mention last week, but I don't think I gave the shout out. So thank you for for forwarding that my way. That is going to be a valuable research piece for in development projects, which we'll talk about at some point. All right, kids, be nice in the chat. I don't know what's going on. I didn't see the context, but be cool in the chat, please. So tonight's not the night, folks. Tonight is not, it's a happy night here in sunny Ohio. Actually, the weather is crap. So I will mention a variety of news items. We already got the Call of Cthulhu bundle holding thing out of the way. I will also mention that the Ilau game from... All right, kids. We're going to put somebody in timeout here if we don't... If we need to... I don't know what... Kabuki Kid, thanks for stopping by. I'm not like seeing... I'm not really seeing what's going on in the chat. The chat is going by a little bit too fast. So I will leave it to John and Stacking Limit to take care of what needs to be taken care of. So let's all be cool. We're all friends here, right? So one way or the other. So Sound of Drums Ilau is the printing was completed on December 29th, and it will be shipping fairly soon. There is a Game Found crowdfunding thing on that. Now I'm like caught up to the top. So get in on, like, if you want to get in on that, get in on it now. If everybody, maybe everybody's very angry about the football game, that's possible. So I'm not watching it on purpose. I'll check in on the score later. It's Michigan, so I can't watch it, but I am rooting for Michigan to actually win the game. So, and Winter Offensive is this weekend in Baltimore. I assume the weather will be dreadful in Baltimore. Now, also this weekend is the Armchair Dragoons Digital Convention, which has already been brought up by Brant. So sign up for that. Go over to the Armchair Dragoons site. There's a link. Actually, I don't have a link anymore in the video description, but armchairdragoons.com. So there's a whole bunch of interesting and fun things happening there. I will be running an OCS boot camp at some point. I forget when I said I would do that. We also do have the San Diego HistCon digital thing, whatever they're calling that, coming up as well. So we will be doing something for that as well. I cannot scroll back to see what the kerfluffle was. I am just keeping an eye on the chat as it is happening right now. I'll always root for a Big Ten team over an SEC team, but I know Washington's not an SEC team, but it's, you know, they're an honorary SEC team because they're not in the Big Ten. So, but that is not my problem. I didn't put the ticker up. I was so frenzied. Thank you for reminding me. I was so frenzied trying to get everything working prior to the show that and I'm delighted that it's all working. So so there's the ticker. So contact information is in there. All right, what else do we got going on here? So I spent a good chunk of the weekend working on the game table. I am not doing like a detailed how-to video on how to do it, but I do have some video on it as, you know, it's kind of a work, you know, here's where I am, here's where we're at with this thing. Progress was not as rapid as I would have liked it to be, but you know, we're operating here without real woodworking tools or any woodworking skill or talent. So so there's that. So you know, given all that, I think it is coming along okay so far. My biggest problem is potential problem anyway. It's going to be getting it in the basement. So we'll see how that goes. But the maps, it's basically a 4x8 sheet of plywood. I mean, it's a table made out of a 4x8 sheet of plywood. So the playing surface is 4 feet by 8 feet. So this is true. The pack, whatever they're calling the pack thing is toast. So there's that, but one way or the other. I did get some pictures, which I put up on social media in various places. So check those out if you are interested. I actually ran into a dude at Home Depot who recognized my shirt. It wasn't this shirt. It turns out to be a big D&D guy. It was a buddy of Tom Moldvay back in the day. Now, if you might recall, I don't know that anybody will recall if you're not from here, because why would you? Tom Moldvay was from the Akron-Canton area. Tom Moldvay was the fella who did the basic D&D set that got me into D&D in the first place back in the day. So football, you know, there's actually a lot more overlap in personality types between gamers and sports fans than you might think. I believe Moldvay was BX. That is correct. I think Moldvay was the basic, and I want to say somebody else did the expert set. David Cook did the expert set, as I recall. So there you go. Ed Holtzman has it. Moldvay was basic. March Cook, Gene March, something like that. But anyway, this fella, apparently Lawrence Schick was from around here too. Oh, I never owned nor played Top Secret, Eric Schaefer, so I cannot attest to any top secret thing. All right, Jeff Beeler has the dirt on the SD HistCon Winter Quarters 2024 taking place Saturday, February 3rd. Registration is open for $10. They have doubled the price of registration for this thing. Gets you access to a full day of incredible gaming. Tickets are limited, so get yours soon. There will be like a warm up and a closing show that I'll be in on for that. So, oh, for fuck's sake, get out of here! Can I not block this dude? Yeah, it's on Twitch, fuckers. This is like exactly why I don't normally stream to Twitch too, because of dickheads like this. And I can't even figure out how to fucking block this dude. There you go. He's out of here. All right. So Mentzner did the. So this is the. I'm going to probably get the chronology a little bit wrong here, but this is what I will call the red box D&D, as opposed to the earlier magenta box, which was the Moldvay box. That's the one with the Aero Lotus cover. That's the one I started with. The Mentzner set was a few years later, 2 or 3 years later, something like that. And I want to say Frank did all of the Beckme games, at least up to Companion. Somebody else might have done Master and or Immortals. I'm not sure about that. I'll defer to Brant on this because he's a big Beckme guy. So interestingly, yeah, so let me mention that damn it, if I wouldn't have screwed everything up before the show, I might have had this to flash on the screen. I have obtained a copy of a game I didn't think I was ever going to obtain a copy of, and that is La Grande Guerre from Azure Wish Enterprises. It is a French game that was not easy to get, even when when it was around, when Azure Wish was around, and they're not anymore. And they were never particularly easy to get over here. So here being in the US. So I have obtained a copy of La Grande Guerre. Thank you, Mike, for the favorable trade that involved me getting rid of a bunch of extra stuff, thereby even clearing up a little bit of shelf space. Not too much, because some of the extra stuff was like behind the actual stuff. So I was cheating anyway. But it did clear up a little bit of shelf space. I traded away my sealed extra copy of Hood Strikes North and a pile of duplicate Traveler material. So I never played Stratomatic, but I did play Status Pro football and Status Pro baseball, and enjoyed them both back in the 80s for what it's worth. So yeah, Azure Wish, no, shit, I don't know, maybe. When did the Princess Bride come out? Because the La Grande Guerre was like 99, I want to say. So you will see a video of La Grande Guerre this hopefully this week, but it's not going to be a detailed rules analysis because that's going to take some time. As mentioned, that game originally appeared in French, and the translation, which was done by Charles Vassy, actually, which is itself interesting. Let me pull this damn thing up so he'll shut up. So there's a kickoff show at the Armchair Dragoons Digital Convention, which I will be on, and that is at 7 this whatever day that is. I don't know. I'll figure that out later. I'm going to put this in the chat as well. Beckme is the series of D&D, regular D&D, not advanced D&D, which was also a thing at the time, boxed sets, basic, expert, companion, master, and immortals. There were 5 boxed sets total, and then the same rules system it's all the same rule system, right? But the same basic generation of D&D later appeared in the D&D Rules Cyclopedia, which then was supported by the Wrath of the Immortals box set, which brought the rest of the Immortals. The Immortal rules were always goofy, in my opinion, anyway. Okay, so Kabuki Kid has it exactly right here. Vincenzo Beretta, welcome back to the show. I believe this to be an accurate statement. However, the OSR people will, for some reason, and there are some minor mechanical differences, will draw a distinction between what they will call BX D&D and Beckme D&D. There are some minor rules differences. The Cyclopedia is basically Beckme. There are some minor differences between the Cyclopedia and the box sets. But the differences there, to my mind, are trivial, right? First edition AD&D was more like an offshoot of BX rather than building on Beckme. So first edition AD&D predated BX, right? The last piece of the first edition AD&D came out in 79. That was a DMG, and the BX set didn't come out till 81. I want to say 81. Now there was the Holmes basic set prior to that, which was like a better presented but crippled D&D, crippleware, in the sense that it only covered the first 3 or 5 levels or whatever. I didn't really want to talk about D&D all night. But this just kind of came up, and I'm not even wearing a D&D shirt, right? I thought about the D&D shirt tonight, but I don't think I've this is Holmes basic was 77, right? Is that correct? Because because Brant, you might be right about this. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, they're more or less contemporary. And the Holmes Basic was not really an attempt to like redo the game. It was just an attempt to create a better presentation for people to figure out how to play it, rather than trying to have to learn from those horrific OD&D rule books. Those were bad rule books, to say the least. And the Monster Manual was 77, but I don't know which one came out first, to be honest. So, and that ain't not something I'm looking up either, off the top of my head. Yeah, no kidding. This is exactly what I said, Sean Torno. All right, so we have only wasted like 8 minutes on that. So, well, what else do we got here going on? So the game table's coming along. I suspect it's going to be another week and a half or two before we're really going to be able to deal with it. I've got to cut the outer plates and do the lid, but the top, that like the table playing surface is all the carpentry is done. I just got to paint it. The first coat of paint went on today. I am using some random shit that the previous occupants of the house left us. I am using it because it is a pleasing and wargamer friendly gray, and there appears to be plenty of it. They left us like 30 gallons of paint, many of which are ancient ass paint that are dried into pucks at this point, but you know, hell, I'll use it, right? And this particular stuff is like a satin finish, you know, medium light gray. It's like, yeah, it's kind of a good wargamey color. So I'm going to use this for the surface, and I got a dark brown that I'm going to paint the frame of the table. Dave Arson, well, certainly, Charles Lenny, I'm not going to argue with this. Dave certainly felt that way, and that was not without reason. There is a documentary called Secrets of Blackmore that you probably want to watch, but bear in mind that it has a distinct point of view, right? I never met Arneson, on the other hand. When I was... he was kind of welcomed back into the fold after I was no longer playing D&D. Let me put it that way. Latex paint with, I don't even know if this is latex paint. It's bear paint, but and I don't like bear paint because it takes like 2 days to dry, and I don't like that. I think that's a pain in the ass. So it's coming along. The legs are cut and sanded. I have to paint them. Everything's going to be at final assembly right in the room back here. That's where the final assembly and probably some of the painting too is going to occur. The most difficult woodworking part of the entire, what the shit was that? Let me know if there is any kind of stream hitch, please. I'm going to close this fucking thing. Anyway, I forgot what I was going to say now. Damn it. So 165, holy crap, 165 people here. Apparently the ball game's pretty boring. So we had like a weird flash here going on, but I get this weird notification bullshit thing that's happening that I really got to turn off, except when I don't want to turn it off. Bear paint. Meandering Mike, the latter. I like Sherwin-Williams. I used to work for Sherwin-Williams. That has nothing to do with it. I think their paint is better. So the paint for the body of the table will be Sherwin-Williams paint that I bought, but it hadn't gotten used for whatever reason. So anyway, assembly is coming along. There's going to be a top playing surface with a raised lip. A lid, a 3-piece, I might do it in 2 pieces, but currently the plan is 3-piece. A 3-piece lid that will rest on top and kind of nest inside. And then we will there'll be a shelf underneath. So this is not only going to be a table to play on, it's going to be storage as well. I'm absolutely storing games down there. Frank, I certainly hope so. There will be a video on the table, but like I said, it's not going to be like a how to build a table type of thing. Although I will include a parts list, which will probably include the parts list will no doubt include the 6 extra 2x4s that I bought. So, Matt Taylor's thinking about selling all of your games. That that's a tragedy when that kind of thing happens. You lost audio. We lost audio. Audio is good. Okay, so all right. So let me know if the audio is okay. We are testing over here. StreamYard seems to think it's okay. So, I mean, I would not ever get rid of all my games. Getting rid of crap that I don't need, that's an entirely different story. But you know, SFB, oh Jesus. So certain we'll get into this. I think actually, Charles Lane, this is a good question. There are certain games that there really isn't a campaign. There may be campaigns, but they're not campaign games. It's basically all scenarios, and the quote unquote campaigns are just really big scenarios. And Starfleet Battles is one of those. If you have Federation and Empire, you could turn that into a campaign if you wanted to do. Was it to the university? I wasn't clear from watching Marco's video, and it was almost everything, right? And that, you know, Marco had, I don't know, what, 5,000 games or something like that. Man, I can't store 5,000 games. I'm having trouble storing 500 games. So if, you know, Marco wants to do whatever Marco wants to do, that's cool. And he donated it to some charitable cause. I just didn't catch who it was. I did watch the video, however. So because he's got like a whole house, a tiny house in his backyard dedicated to games. And now there's no games in it. So what was the point of that? So, yes, that's exactly right. And, you know, in a sense that's kind of a dream setup. However, to like have a separate outbuilding for gaming, right? But on the other hand, if that outbuilding is really primarily just for storage, I mean, if I had 5,000 games, I'm not confident in my ability to play 500 games, let alone 5,000 games, right? If you watch Sean, if you watch the video that he put up, it looks like he kept about 30 games. Actually, I don't know that it's a couple of hundred. It wasn't much, and it wasn't much war games. I can tell you that. It wasn't zero war games, but not much. You know, Half-Ass Gaming, thanks for stopping by. You know, if you want, you will find an amiable market for GBACW. If there is no shame in saying, you know, this is just not for me. This just isn't working for me. I completely understand somebody making that, regardless of what game it is, right? It might be a game that I personally think is amazing. And, you know, so what? There's other games that other people think are amazing that I just decided they weren't for me. Combat Commander is the classic example here. Was not for me. So, all right. So do we have anything else? Yes, we have resumed play of Napoleon's Last Gamble as of last week. Now, I did have a schedule. GBACW is a complicated system, right? So there's for that reason alone, there's really no shame in saying, you know, maybe this is just too much. So there's nothing wrong with that. And now's not a bad time to unload a copy of 3 Days of Gettysburg if you have it, because they're bringing a new one out at some point. So, all right. Yeah, this is kind of my my position as well. Unfortunately, my wife has a weird shoe size, so she does not really have a lot of shoes. Not because she doesn't want a lot of shoes, but because they don't make that many shoes in her size. So so there's that. All right. So I'm going to mention, and I am contemplating some kind of fun ticker or something like that to keep track of this. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that the official sponsor of the Counter Clipping Show is now Noble Knight Games. And they are doing a fabulous job. And I got like the first report from them on the affiliate, how the affiliate link's doing. And I was thinking, you know, this will probably do all right. I get a little bit extra store credit. That's cool. But the notional goal here is to be able to get some things that otherwise might be out of reach, because let me turn this back on. We're still on 1080, and I have increased the camera resolution. So the idea, and the idea is Campaign for North Africa, but they don't have one in stock right now anyway, so it's kind of academic, at least at the moment. So I figured, I'll go a year and a half or 2 years or something like that, and I'll be able to pick up something big like that, right? Le Grand Guerre was, which they didn't particularly want a terribly absurd price for last time they had it, I will point out. I think they wanted like $295 for it, which is really not that bad. So there'll be some kind of thing where we talk about the road to Campaign for North Africa in 2024. So anyway, I got the first report from them. And Jason, Matt Taylor, very sorry to hear about that. Let's fuck cancer, man. What can I say? I mean, seriously. But so I got the first report of how things did, and it was like the first 2 weeks, right? Because it was like the holidays and all that, and I'm like, we did really exceptionally well. So I would like to remind everybody that there is an affiliate link for Noble Knight Games in the video description, and if you are going to buy games from Noble Knight, use the affiliate link, and I will get a little bit of kickback in the form of store credit, and eventually that will pile up so that I will be able to get an expensive game like Campaign for North Africa or whatever it turns out to be. So that's awesome. So thank you, Noble Knight Games. We'll have a message from them later. Great question, Bob Kowalczyk. We'll get to that. There is a CNA on BGG for $350, but it's been there for a while, and I kind of suspect that maybe that person is not answering the messages. And yes, it being on the Big Bang Theory did cause prices to skyrocket. I will absolutely do that. So I think this is great. This is great. See, paying cash for it is a different story, right? I don't have the $350 to buy it off of BGG, so that's kind of academic. But if I could let the credit pile up, so in case I wasn't clear about this, thank you everyone who bought stuff from Noble Knight through my affiliate link, and we made a nice chunk of credit, right? I expected to be like 5% of the way toward the notional cost of a Campaign for North Africa after like a month, and after like 2 weeks we're more like 20% of the way, man, maybe 15, but it's like 2 or 3 times better than I thought it was going to be. So anyway, I did a stupid, so this is the last thing we're going to talk about that's not the topic, and we'll get back to that later. So I have a terrible tendency to, and I'm pretty good at avoiding this. I have a terrible tendency to say, "Ooh, that looks fun. Let's take up that new hobby," right? So I've been able to just say no to that a lot in the last, and this includes things like miniatures and other kinds of games and things like that. Miniatures and other, I would like to learn how to play the bass guitar. That'd be fun. I don't have the fucking time for that. So, but then I took like that week off between Christmas and New Year's, and actually took like 2 days off, and I consequently got this thing in my head about, it would be cool to have some college textbooks just to have, so I could at my convenience learn differential equations or some bullshit like that. So the takeaway is I bought 5 college textbooks. The good news is the most expensive one was about $7. All of these came from, not all of them are here yet, came from eBay. So if you're looking for college textbooks for any reason, get them on eBay. Jeff Engelstein's Encyclopedia of Board Game Mechanics, unfortunately, is not available on eBay for a discounted price. That is unfortunate, because I'd love to have that, but it's like $80, and I think it's textbook price, right? It's not an unreasonable textbook price. Well, it is an unreasonable textbook price, but it's a textbook, so what are you going to do? But I'm not at that price. I'm not paying $80 for it. So thank you. Oh crap, I meant to mention the survey from Decision as well, but we'll maybe get to that next time they have a survey. So there's tons of YouTube videos and online things and stuff like that, so it would be kind of cool. Anyway, All right, so scenarios versus campaigns. You know, there are lots of folks. I want to say I will rely on our Canadian friends to tell us how the shipping costs are in Canada for Noble Knight. But I would imagine that Noble Knights has some less unreasonable way to get stuff to Canada. Let me put it that way. I mean, I think it would be cool to have as a reference, frankly. That's why I would want it. Maybe if Noble Knight gets it, then I could get store credit. By the way, if you order over $150, they you get free shipping. So Meandering Mike, is this so the new one? There's a new one. I didn't know there was multiple editions. I'll have to look into that. Anyway, so scenarios versus campaigns. So lots of folks and I think my inclination is to want to play campaigns, right? As mentioned previously, there you go. Well, obviously I got to come down and help you play that, don't I? There are certain games that don't really have campaigns, right? They have campaigns, but they're really just big scenarios, right? ASL is like this. Starfleet Battles is like this. There are campaigns, but they're like the historical campaigns, and then you could like use Fed and Empire as a scenario generator for Starfleet Battles if you wanted to, but that would also mean you're never going to finish your Fed and Empire game. So yeah, so I did that short on shipping costs. I guess I'll mention this tonight too. So I have an incoming package from GMT, which is Norman Conquest and the errata counter sheet. And GMT charged me $24 to ship it U.S. Postal Service. Okay, so I'm like, God damn it! So I actually looked to see what it would cost to ship something from Hanford, California, to me, and it's $24.50 or something like that. So GMT is not gouging anybody on that. If they're maybe they get some kind of bulk rate. I would hope that they do. I mean, if I can get a better rate through pirate ship, they probably can. But that is pretty much what the USPS charges. So I did a short about it, and let's have enormous sympathy for our beloved friends in Canada and Europe and Australia for what they're paying. We're paying $24 just to ship it around the corner. So the corner being Colorado, I suppose. I haven't watched the videos, but I am following the social media posts on this. I have my favorite winners in that bracket too. And Last Blitzkrieg is really high on that list, by the way. But the Last Gamble is not out yet, so there's that. I don't believe this. Well, so I mean, this is certainly sometimes the case. So Marty says that most games, when play tested, focus on campaigns. Scenarios don't get tested as much. See OCS, for example. Now, it's interesting, Marty, that you should mention that because I personally have play tested numerous OCS scenarios. So I can vouch for. Now, I can't vouch for every OCS game, but I can vouch for the fact that at least the current crop of games is getting scenario playtests. I do believe this to be the case some of the time, but it certainly wasn't the case at SPI either, with a thing like War in the Pacific, which they emphatically did not playtest in the campaign, but they did playtest at least one of the scenarios reasonably heavily. Like Guadalcanal scenario was playtested fairly heavily, and they may have playtested some of the other scenarios as well. War and so in general, I will observe that. Let's try and make this more general. Multi-man games tend to have very strong scenario selections. There are exceptions to that, but the exceptions stand out more because that is a general thing. I mean, all the gamers stuff have generally had really strong scenario selections. GCACW has, which I'm going to talk about specifically in a minute, has always had a really good scenario selections. GTS, not all the games have great scenario selections, but most of them do. SCS game, looks like I'm seeing some hitching here. I'm not sure what's going on, but maybe that's just the stream in YouTube. USPS says they're lowering their rates. I thought I saw. I don't know about that. I think Pirate Ship says they're lowering their rates, actually. Now, this is interesting because some of the side conversations, which I haven't gotten back to Frank on that yet. Sorry, Frank. I was real busy this weekend. I will get back to you. Is specifically about ahistoricity in some of the scenarios that doesn't necessarily appear in the campaigns. And I think that's potentially a worry too, if you need to artificially balance a scenario. Now, there's also, as has been mentioned several times so far, are there scenarios in Source of the Now? There are some games that there are no scenarios, and it's just the campaign. My understanding is that Campaign for North Africa is like that. I don't remember. I thought there were some scenarios in Source of the Now, but they were really kind of more alternate setups. I think Source of the Now is a great game. And absolutely amenable. It's probably a better solitaire experience than it is a multiplayer experience, to be completely honest, because there's very little player interaction. Carl mentions that he can vouch for the excellence of the BCS scenario selections. And yeah, I mean, all the BCS games so far have had very, very good scenario selections. And I think that's important, right? I want to say that a scenario can give you an experience that is fundamentally a different kind of experience than the campaign, right? Same game. We could be talking about the same game. A great example of this would be, I am done with End of Empire, by the way, and we're 39 minutes in. A great example of this would actually be, that is totally going to fall on the floor if I put it there, would be Brazen Chariots for BCS, because Brazen Chariots is so it's the Operation Crusader BCS game. However, it also has Operation Battle Axe and Operation Brevity in it, and whatever. There's a German operation that's in there too, right? So or two. So you're really getting, if you could play Compass or Operation Crusader, and it's going to be a pretty different feeling experience than Operation Battle Axe, right? They're very different situations, even though they're both in basically the same place. They all fit on the same map. So the Gamer Civil War games. So I have 3 of these right now, 3 or 4 of these, and on the to-do list, I don't know that this is on the 2024 to-do list, but on the eventual to-do list is check out the Gamer Civil War Brigade series. I have played Line of Battle, on the other hand, and I like it a lot. And it also has very strong scenario selections in all of those games. So William Aarons is, of course, in Canada, and he says he'll use Noble Knight only when he can use a U.S. address. Yeah, I don't know what the situation is for them to ship to Canada. I just don't know. I don't have any information on that. I would think they would have the ability to get a better rate than just taking it to the post office. Let me put it that way. So Charles Lenny says, by definition, campaigns should define starting forces and conditions for scenarios. Maybe. I think I am reading this in a different context than you are saying it, because the campaign, if played, can certainly result in something that looks like a historical scenario, but it also might not, right? Perfidious Albion hates balanced scenarios in ASL, not very realistic, and I suspect the vast majority of engagements are anything but balanced. Sure, that's absolutely true. In fact, as all the various military commenters would tell you, Sun Tzu to Clausewitz to whoever will tell you, if your encounter is, if the oncoming battle is balanced, you'd be better off not having it that day. Right? You want to put the enemy in the position where it's not balanced and you can put overwhelming force on them and crush them. Nevertheless, there are situations in military history that end up looking reasonably balanced, even if only in the light of we, the game designers, have artificially balanced it for the sake of making a game that is actually interesting to play. An obvious example of that would be the Bulge, right? Or even Market Garden, right? You set the victory conditions such that the game is reasonably competitive. But reasonably competitive doesn't mean the Germans have a 50-50 chance of making it to Antwerp either, right? Todd Cox says that sometimes this scenario is just the first X turns or days of the campaign. Yes, and actually, I think that's actually an attractive option when available, because that way you're not necessarily committing to a huge experience. And bear in mind that, I have a predilection for larger games, right? And that means that doing a campaign is a huge commitment. So, as Carl Harris points out, and referring to Mark McNair's earlier comment, if you're playing a Gettysburg campaign game, then again, I'm going to use in this case Last Chance for Victory as the best example here, because one of the things that sold me on that game specifically, and Line of Battle in general, is just the immensity of the number of scenarios available in that game. You've got the full campaign. You've got a couple of different starts for the full campaign. You've got a day 1 scenario, a day 2 scenario, a day 3 scenario. I think there's a hypothetical day 4 scenario in there. You've got little scenarios for all the little hills and crests and ridges and Little Round Top and the wheat field and Devil's Den and all that stuff. You've got scenarios for all that stuff. So if you're going to play the campaign, you're going to see a good chunk of that, right? But if you also just want to feel out the system, there's literally an 8.5 by 11 map to play the wheat field out on. So, or if you just want to say, you know what, let's game out Pickett's Charge. If you, I think there's a Pickett's Charge scenario in Last Chance for Victory. I could be wrong. I haven't opened the box in a couple of years. Fire in the East, no scenarios. I haven't actually looked at it in a while. I think this is right, but they did supply a large number of scenarios. Europa was not traditionally strong with scenarios. You typically got, this is the campaign. However, in the Europa magazine and in the predecessor magazine, I think the Grenadier, they did publish a fair number of scenarios in those side publications. Joe Perez doubts that the campaign scenario encompasses Montelimar was playtested at all. Let's say that I am not going to say. I'm trying to not make anybody mad here. I believe I wouldn't be surprised if Joe is correct here. Let me put it that way. I don't necessarily think that could be laid at the feet of Compass. I think that Adam Starkweather can rush designs. I think he is a good designer with a good eye for mechanics. But his strongest stuff came out under MMP, because MMP had a big elaborate mechanism for getting shit play tested and polished. So I like the CSS system, but several of those games are less than airtight. Let's put it that way. There are other alternatives to Pirate Ship too, but yeah, I mean they can. I don't know. It might be if you're big enough, you can just call UPS up on the phone and say, hey, give us a shipping of like some kind of shipping discount rate because we're shipping so much stuff. I mean, we used to do that when I was in shipping, and it was an LTL type thing, right? It was 2-3 pallets of stuff every day. So it was not an enormous, we're not shipping tens of thousands of pounds a day. So you can get a deal from UPS or whoever, right? So but anybody can just sign up for Pirate Ship and use that. So when I ship stuff, it goes out through Pirate Ship. The Big Stack of Traveler stuff went out through Pirate Ship. Meandering Mike says that some campaigns are a string of scenarios, especially in dungeon crawlers. Hexagon or Wargame campaign games are usually just one gigantic scenario. So, all right, now here's where I'm going. I really can't speak to dungeon crawlers, which is a genre of board game that I haven't really had a lot of. This sounds weird, but I haven't really had a lot of experience with it. But and as Tony Mammal points out, the scenarios can have a pedagogical value too in teaching you how to play the game, either because it's just small and limited, or because it's a programmed instruction type of thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be a programmed instruction as such, as long as there's something there for you to chew on that is less than the whole thing, right? So I'm going to use here the example of great campaigns of the American Civil War. So we have here a series that's now into, I don't know, 12, 13 volumes or something like that. It's a lot, right? There's, it's been coming out from Multi-Man for some years now. And before that, it was Avalon Hill. So there's a lot of volumes in the series, and all of the volumes of the series have had very strong scenario selections. Okay. Now in GCACW, you also have like basic scenarios and advanced scenarios. And usually the basic scenarios are just scenarios, but the advanced scenarios are campaigns. But you can also get basic scenarios that just use the basic rules, but which are quite long and can feel like campaigns. There is a significant difference in the output play experience between the GCACW basic game stuff and the GCACW advanced stuff. You add a lot in the advanced stuff with logistics and railroad station damage and all that stuff. So there's like a lot. It's a noticeably different experience. So at least in that case, well, man, I think Mike is right, and certainly you do see this. Not all games are put together like that. Not all Hex Encounter games are like that. Now, Carl mentions that Brazen Chariots only had 3 scenarios when submitted, and Carl took care of that. So thank you, Carl, for coming through on that. You've got some good Canadian game retailers, too. You've got the Century Box in Calgary. You've got Tadnak Games out on the East Coast where the Vikings used to live. So check them out. And that's Tadnak Games is Pete Bartlett. He's good people. So, by all means, patronize your Canadian retailers. Deck 2 has at least 20 scenarios, which are fundamentally the battles during the entire North Africa campaign. I haven't played Deck 2. At some point, obviously, I'll need to. This table will not fit Deck 2, but asterisk. If you leave off the Alexandria map, which is the 5th map, it will fit. So Matt Van Wielden, first of all, welcome to the show. Says OCS Crimea doesn't have a true campaign, if he's understanding correctly, as there were lulls in the historical campaign. I actually feel that it is the opposite. I believe that there are 2 campaign games in the box, in addition to some smaller scenarios. You've got the 41-42 Conquest of the Crimea. That's one campaign. And then the 43 to 44 liberation, if you to use the Soviet term generously, of the Crimea later on. So yeah, there's like a huge lull in there, but I feel like in that particular case, especially given the design provenance where you got 2 different designers, where you've got Guy Wild, who did the 41-42 campaign, and Tony Burkett, who did the 43-44 campaign. And they kind of put their heads together and came up with one product that covered both things. So it's a good looking product, and I have played it in play testing, but I haven't played it since I actually got the physical game. Vincenzo asked about combinable games like TWW, Third World War. Okay, so I assume we're talking about Third World War. So it's not even combinable. It's all one big thing. So it's pre-combined, and you can uncombine it if you like. So is there a distinction between playing? Let me put it this way. Let's say you have 2 different groups of people playing Under an Iron Sky. One's playing Under an Iron Sky, and one's playing Under an Iron Sky plus Deadly Northern Lights. All right. Is one of those 2 groups playing a campaign and the other not? I don't think so. I think they're both playing campaigns. So I think that while many games will present themselves in such a way as to say, here are scenarios, and here is the campaign, the one campaign that comes in this box. Ultimately, once you get these games, they're yours now. You can do what you want with them. So you can have truncated campaigns, or say, we're going to play this big D-Day thing, but we're going to stop at June 12th. You can do whatever you want. And that includes combining it with other games in the series, right? I think those are still campaigns. They're just bigger campaigns, right? All right. So Charles says it means that the conduct of a campaign results in resource management choices that affect units produced and transported. So produce, not necessarily. I play a lot of operational stuff, and production's not really a factor. But yeah, I mean the logistical constraints, absolutely. But let's say that you have let's say that you're playing Guderian's Blitz. We might see a lot of OCS examples in this. Let's say you're playing Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2, all right, and you start to play the campaign and you play for a while, and I forget exactly when this particular battle happens, but there's a decent sized battle around Mozhaisk where the Soviet rifle division, might even be a rifle corps, really significantly delays the German advance there, right? So you could play that out in OCS and it'd be, 6 counters or 8 counters or something like that, maybe 15 counters, something like that, depending on whether you had, and you would actually have multi-unit formations involved. So you could play that out in OCS, but there's nothing that says if you're playing the campaign that when you get to that point, even if you have a battle there, that's going to look anything like the historical battle. The logistical constraints might be totally different. That may have been where your main thrust went, and that's where you were funneling all the supply, in which case chances are the Soviet defenders, that could be the same defenders that were there historically, are going to get steamrolled, right? Because that's not where the emphasis was historically. So Gina in CA, thanks for joining. Welcome to the show. It says a real campaign to me does not specify scenarios. The campaign generates the conditions for battles to occur in a dynamic way, and the results feed back into the campaign. So I think this is an interesting way to look at a given campaign as a play experience. Could necessarily be seen as a sequential set of gameplays of individual scenarios as that campaign evolves. And in that sense, then I think this statement makes total sense. We're a little behind on the chat. We're significantly behind on the chat. All right. Perfidious Albion says the original squad leader in early ASL scenarios did not place that much emphasis on play balance. Rather, engagements were very asymmetrical. I mean, the original squad leader really those scenarios are really built to teach you the game, right? And that's, both a virtue of the original squad leader and a limitation of what physically came in the box and why they later needed to support it with more stuff. Kevin Featherly says for him playing GCACW, scenarios make for a rich experience. I totally agree. I think the scenarios, I think you're getting a different but not worse experience playing basic game scenarios versus advanced campaigns in GCACW. Seems like playing out the written Hood Strikes North scenario forces a solo player to hew closer to historical reality than the campaign. Very plausible. One might easily have more operational flexibility playing the campaign because you have more tools in the toolbox, right? Did BCS win any CSRs for being so damn innovative? Got a couple nominations, I can tell you that. Wins, I'd have to look, to be completely honest. I'm aware that I probably should have all this memorized, but I do not. Well, I'm not gonna criticize them for the scenarios being unbalanced as such. And Avalanche press games tend to have a lot of scenarios. I don't think it's a problem to have unbalanced scenarios. However, you gotta whoever's playing should know that it's unbalanced, right? Richard Berg was always good about this, right? And I gotta give Mark Herman some credit here as well. When you look at GBOH scenarios, they'll tell you hey, this scenario heavily favors the Carthaginians, for example. And CSRs are by games and not series. That is true. Series opens up huge cans of worms. It would be difficult to do. I won't say no. I'll tell you not this year. Let me put it that way. Frank says campaign length demands more long-term outlook, which can coincide better with history, assuming you aren't playing a game of Verdun or Tsushima. Frank, I always feel like I have to give these statements a great deal of thought. I mean, clearly the first part of that sentence is absolutely on the nose. Campaign length demands more long-term outlook, so more long-term planning. You have to kind of plan ahead, perhaps more so than you might have to in a shorter scenario. I don't want to say good, but a well-designed game without major historicity problems is probably going to incentivize players to explore options that are at least adjacent to the historical outcomes, right? And not go completely off the reservation. Verdun or Tsushima, because they're generally battles that aren't considered awesome for war games. Scott Bell mentions that scenarios can be balanced by adjusting victory conditions. Absolutely. And again, this comes back to the bulge in Market Garden, to be honest about that. I mean, this is one reason why I don't do as much GCACW content for the channel as I was, because Patrick's doing such a good job with that. Wolfdog usually chooses scenarios due to time constraints. So this is a factor too, right? So let's say I just bought, well, I mean, I didn't just buy, but you know what I'm saying. Let's a hypothetical individual has just bought the third Winter. It's a 4-map game and requires probably an extra map and a half worth of displays. You don't have to use the displays, but you want to. I could totally fit that on a 4x8 table, right? On the other hand, somebody without that amount of table space handy, or without that amount of table space that they can just leave set up for 6 months at a time, that's not really an option. So one can choose to play scenarios based on the constraints that they are operating under, whether those are constraints of space or time or whatever. Silent War is 1 map, though, as I recall, so I could be wrong. Let me know if that's wrong. I think that's right. Last chance for victory has 23 scenarios. And I feel like that combined with reading the designer's notes, which were available, and I bought it when it was like still available for multi-man. I think directly for multi-man at that. That was a huge selling point for me, reading through the designer's notes and seeing the obviously huge amount of research and thought that had gone into it, plus the enormous and well thought out scenario selection. So there are some development questions for Richard Berg games in many cases as well. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a scenario that's unbalanced. Berg will usually tell you that it was unbalanced. Jason W asks, and he's asking this of Carl. Carl has presumably already answered. Aerocore or Baptism by Fire for BCS newbies? I'm going to say Aerocore. I think that the colored stripes to identify the units, unless you're colorblind, in which case maybe it doesn't help you. But barring that, is a really big help. Aerocore is a smaller game in terms of density and number of formations and all that too. But it's not like it doesn't feel tiny either. There's still a lot to do. Greg Grant says that Deck 2's many scenarios are fantastic. That should move pretty fast, though. I mean, the density in North Africa is generally quite low. DAC is a thing that I absolutely want to get on this new game table if it ever gets done. So, and Carl agrees. Carl says Aerocore hands down. The one caveat with Aerocore is remember the slightly different way to handle fatigue 3 and 4 units. So just bear that in mind as you are learning Aerocore, that in the core BCS game, you don't necessarily have to do those mandatory things with fatigue 3 and 4 units. Joe Faust says that Memoir 44 scenarios are famously unbalanced. Playtime is short enough that I've told my Memoir 44 story already. I've played it 2 or 3, I think twice, and had a dire experience both times. Both of those experiences were in large format with like 6 or however many people it is per side. I don't know if we're calling that epic or grand battles or whatever. D-Day scenarios, and in both cases they were over in under an hour. You at the time you were paying, and both of them were at Origins, and you were paying by the hour basically. So you felt ripped off at the end. You paid for this 8-hour game, and you played for 52 minutes. What made me bounce off Combat Commander? I assume we're referring to me here, Kabuki Kid, and I will tell you that I felt as a player, I felt deprotagonized by an inability to do anything with the cards I was dealt from time to time, and it did not feel good as gameplay. Lots of other people have an absolutely opposite experience from that in Combat Commander. Most of those battles are historically unbalanced. Robert Maxey mentions Case Yellow. This is, I think you're talking about, is this the Ted Racer Case Yellow? As I recall, this is supposed to be a pretty strong game. And it's, I have a high opinion of Ted's designs, to be honest. Perfidious Albion says that in a number of tactical games, such as ASL or Squad Leader, you can create random scenarios with variable for. Yeah, this is true. You get the random or DIY scenario generation in Squad Leader had it, and ASL absolutely has it. I don't know how often those get used. I'm not saying they don't get used. I'm saying I don't ever see them get used. But part of that is probably that there's 7 million actual scenarios. Why do you need to design your own random scenario? Just pick one of the 7 million scenarios and you will all be good. Joe Perez says that all the combat commander scenarios he's played seems to start out with fairly even forces. So at least some of the squad leader scenarios. I mean, remember the scale is roughly the same. The squad leader scenarios tend to be fairly meticulously balanced from a let me start that over because I just said what I just said was bullshit. They tend to be fairly researched. Okay, so if somebody actually did some research on this engagement and designed a scenario based on that research. That's the traditional path among official ASL scenarios done by the people that I know who have done ASL scenarios, which is pretty much Bill Sisler and a couple of the other Northeast Ohio guys who I've actually talked to. I don't know that that's the same thing is being done for combat commander scenarios, to be honest. Carol Harris asks, what's the threshold for playtesting on a campaign with multiple possibilities? Someone somewhere is liable to break it. Well, this is true. Also, as has been pointed out often in the past, Lou Pulsifer had a whole video about this a year or two ago, and I disagreed with Lou at the time. He says you can't play test monster games, and that's bullshit. You absolutely can, but it's harder. There's no doubt about that. They are more work to play test. That's 100% accurate. So bearing that in mind, how many, let's say you have a monster game. Let's say your design. Let's say Mark Simonich is designing the Gustav line. All right, so you're looking at a one map or half map, maybe a game on the Italian campaign in World War II that's playable in a sitting. You play it in an afternoon, 4 or 5 hours, something like that. So I would imagine Mark's got hundreds of playtest games under his belt by the time that thing releases, right? I don't think you're going to say the same thing to Tony Burkett, who's designing this giant 4-map East Front thing. He's not going to have hundreds of playtest games. However, dozens, yeah, he might have dozens. But I think that is unusual for really large games, really large war games, for them to get play tested that extensively. And there are certainly many examples I can think of big games that I don't think were play tested that exhaustively. But that doesn't guarantee that you can't find somewhere to break it, right? I don't, as Matt points out, yes, many of the Men of Iron battles are pretty unbalanced. We are now 20 minutes behind in the chat, so I am going to move forward. So as Stigler points out, yes, you can absolutely have a good game out of an unbalanced battle. That's totally true, without artificially puffing one side. My wife is sick right now, John, so I don't know what's going on. I feel great, so I don't know what's going on with that. Vincenzo mentioned Storming the Gap by Lock and Load. I have no experience with that product. A lot of people like it. Let's see. There is a challenge in designing scenarios where the historical situation is unbalanced. You may be challenged to come up with victory conditions that make sense and that work. In some cases, at least, kind of the work's been done for you by the predecessor games that you're inspired by, whether you know you are or not, like the Battle of the Bulge, right? Perfidious Albion mentions the ASL historical packages where you play a campaign and for each succeeding scenario, you're left with the survivors of the. Yeah, that is one of the campaign modes that is used in the historical ASL scenarios. I mean, this is kind of where you're at mostly with Bulge games and Market Garden games, right? The Germans want to do better than they did historically, or the Allies want to do better than they did historically, right? That makes complete sense. I feel like So let's say Red Barricade. I can never remember what the damn name of the actual product is. Because Red Barricades was the original, the first ASL historical module back in the day by Avalon Hill, and I had it back in the day. And then they did the second adjoining factory complex, and they redid it. I want to say as Red Factories, okay, 2-in-1 redone, both the old Red Barricades and the new Red October. I think that's how the nomenclature works. And I felt like that, and I played a little bit of that, and I felt like that's very much like an experiential thing. I found you're really going to have to be the right kind of player to play that campaign. Not like the ASL master necessarily, although I would strongly advise staying away from Red Barricades if you aren't pretty good with ASL. But just so that you have to be able to enjoy that experience of, okay, if you're the Germans, are you going to have fun grinding Russians out of every single basement and sewer? Because that's what it's going to be like. And the same thing with the Russians. You're just going to have to put up this stiff resistance all over the place. I think that was pretty cool. But, it's easy to see how some people might not find that fun. I completely agree with Chad Kennedy's point here. I kind of like the fact that they just kind of neatly separated basic and advanced rules for the scenarios versus campaigns. It doesn't quite break down this simply because sometimes the scenarios, the basic game stuff will basically have an advanced game rule in the scenario specific rules. Yes, actually. So the John Tiller games have generally really strong scenario selections, and they're really full experiences in general. I have Shelt 44, I think, and I really need to get into it, but man, that UI is it's killing me, man. Vinny Albion says the beauty of deck 2 is that you're only fighting a specific battle at any one time and probably won't need more than 2 maps at a time. Yeah, but rotating the maps in and out is no, we're not doing that. Thomas Bandy from Lorain County, Ohio, where I spent my first approximately 25 years, actually. So obviously we got to get you out here at some point and do some BCS or something. Good to hear you're getting good results out of BCS. I can totally get behind Carl as Grunyard of the Year. So, no, and the Suez is on but whether it's going to happen or not, right? That's on the Alexandria map that I'd be leaving off. So, excellent. Jason W has ordered BCS Aerocore. Suspicious. Excellent. All right, Kim Featherly mentions OCS, Guderian's Blitzkrieg. Ooh, okay. So I'm glad, Kevin, you've asked this question because the answer is unfortunately not. So we are 21, 22 games into OCS at this point. Okay. And we're up to rules version, I want to say 4.3. That sounds right. Every single one of those OCS games can be played with the current rules set. There's some minor adjustments that you have to make that are on the the OCS support page. It's now on Multiman's website. But you can play any one of those games with the current rules, except the original Guderian's Blitzkrieg. Now, here's why. There's a major adjustment that's made after Guderian's Blitzkrieg 1. And that is trace supply. Now, I'm not sure exactly how this, because I picked it up actually, but I haven't given it, and I had it back in the day, but I haven't given it a second look to examine it in this context. But to my recollection, there is no trace supply in Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2. Everything eats off the map. So it's like, it's turn 2. Here are your 216 supply points. So no, Guderian's Blitzkrieg 1 is not a good choice. I didn't play it back in the day. I have played Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2 in the years since, and that has been a great experience. Thank you. Who was that? Did I miss it? Shit. Whoever just subscribed, thank you for the support. It is. I'll pull it up in a second here. That is the new subscriber, new patron sound that never. I had it. It's actually been a part of the show for years, and it hasn't actually ever come up until relatively recently. So, so I would. I believe that if you are patient, you can score a copy of GB2 for less than 150, maybe not much less than 150. On the other hand, I'm going to have to check in on this. I mentioned on social media a few days ago, I was kind of going through some stuff. I have 4 extra sets of Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2 maps, and I have at least most of a full extra counter set. I don't know if it's a complete extra counter set or not, because I got handed a giant box of random stuff at one point. So check in with me at some future point, and we can talk about a boxless rulebook list, but you can download all that stuff. Maps and counter set for GB2. Otherwise, maybe pick up something else that you find interesting. Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2 is great, though. I like it a lot. All right, Red Strike. I haven't looked at Red Strike. It looks impressive, like almost everything from VUCA. Carl agrees with me. I'm happy to report it's not. It doesn't work with previous with future games, and that's a huge change. And Doug from Tabletop's Edge says GB1 is not compatible with any other OCS titles. Some subsystems were significant. There's other changes as well. That's just the big one. Try to find Smolensk, but Smolensk is out of print as well now. Crimea is not a terrible starter game, though. That's available now. All right, we're trying to move quickly forward here because we are behind, and we are going to. Well, I look at. I have absolutely not. You could not find my opinion on this with a scanning electron tunneling microscope. All right, so I literally have no position on that whatsoever. All right, we're going to step aside for a second while I try to catch up with the chat, and we also have a word from our sponsor. So I have 30 seconds to try and get caught up on the chat. Thank you, Noble Knight, the official sponsors of the Counter Clipping Show.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more. Going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at. Complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
All right, and I'd like to remind everybody once again that there is a affiliate link in the video description. If you shop at Noble Knight, use my affiliate link, and you will be helping me eventually, in the fullness of time, pick up a copy of Campaign for North Africa or some other very expensive thing. And like I said, we'll have some kind of ticker or countdown or some shit. I got to think about it. It didn't occur to me that I was going to have to come up with anything immediately. So, and I do. As somebody else mentioned, there is an Operational Matters. Actually, both Operational Matters are on pre-order at Multiman right now. And Sicily 2 is a pretty good starter OCS game too. It does have naval stuff in it, which is, a lot of people don't like, but it's you do some naval stuff at the beginning and that's kind of it. And I don't think it's that complicated. So, Chad Kennedy, thank you so much for the support. Much appreciated. Says the largest selection of scenarios and campaigns that he's ever encountered in a game is Case Blue or GB2. So remember that you can combine Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2 with Case Blue, but you are in no sense required to do so. When I played Case Blue, we were able to accommodate like the southern, I think, 4 maps of GB2, maybe it was 2. But then when we played GB2, we just played that. So OCS Burma, which has been mentioned, does feel quite different from other OCS games. Thank you, Chad. Perfidious Albion mentions GDW's Imperium, which is a terrific game, actually. I've played the Avalanche version, and it's not really well done, is it? But it's not it's not total shit either. I didn't think. So, Stuka Joe, thanks for stopping by. Hopefully we haven't ignored you for the last half hour. All right. So Joe Perez has a question here. All right. So Joe mentions got an extra set of maps for GB2 mailed by MMP. So there was some kind of color matching issue with the GB2 maps. And I am not so I did this last week. I actually pulled out Case Blue and GB2 and tried to figure out what map went with what. And I couldn't make heads or tails of it. I've got 4 different sets of GB2 maps. Actually, I have 5 in the box that is on the shelf. There's another set. And there's at least 3 different color tones in those maps. None of which exactly map the Case Blue maps. So I'm not sure. There was some kind of color matching issue that caused them to reprint them. And consequently, there seemed to be a lot of extra GB2 map sets floating around. One can absolutely start. Tunisia 2 has been sold out for some time. One can absolutely start with either. You can really start any OCS game with any OCS game. You should not start playing OCS with Case Blue, the campaign, or Beyond the Rhine, the campaign. But there's, just start with a scenario, right? Even Third Winter has that Scorpions in a Bottle scenario, which will totally teach you how to play OCS. It's not tiny, but it's a completely solid, valid starter scenario, right? So Eric Shaver, thanks for stopping by. We are caught up on the chat, and I apologize for all the people I ignored on the way to the end. So, yeah, I couldn't figure this out. I really couldn't figure this out. So at the end of the day, I just said, these are the 2 closest. I'm gonna put these in a box, and then I got the extra envelope of extra maps, and I'll figure out something. Maybe I'll wallpaper a wall with them or something like that. So I guess I could try this now, actually, since I have all of SPI's Central Front games. We're just talking about a minor color difference in like the base color of the maps, right? We're not talking about like the Donau Front or North European Plain maps that were done in a completely different style than the rest of the maps. Or much less trying to made up an SPI Turbo Swift Sword with a TSR Rebel Sabers. God bless you if you try to do that. Jeff Beeler says OCS Luzon will beat OCS Sicily into print. This is very likely. All right, so I have played Beyond the Rhine twice, and I think we started it a third time, and didn't get that far for whatever reason. So a couple of things here. I think that Beyond the Rhine is possibly the most broken OCS game. Now, I don't mean by that it is irretrievably broken. However, in fact, you can get around what's broken in it just by doing a very simple thing and starting in any scenario that starts after the first turn of the after the first 3 turns of the campaign. The problem I have with it is that you are in no sense incentivized to try to do anything remotely like the Allies historically did and succeeded in doing in those first 3 to 5 turns. It's completely doesn't work. There are some fixes which we have not played with by the designer that may remedy that to some extent, but I cannot verify that yet. I think it's a basically very solid and very interesting game. I think you just got to be very careful about that opening, particularly on the north side where you've got the British are supposed to take Antwerp, and they just, unless the German player is inexperienced or leaves them an opening or decides not to defend it for a reason that makes no sense. It's just it requires perfect execution and perfect luck for them to actually do it, and they simply don't have, out of the box, they don't have enough supply to do it because they have to spend their supply to get their units from where they come on the edge of the board to where the battle is. All their supply goes to that. That's it. Now, one of the optional suggestions from the designer is that units enter in supply. Now that's going to make a significant difference to the British, and I feel like I need to play through that. So we'll see. No, I don't think the scale really causes any problems at all. I think it's just the opening. It's the Another factor is the way airborne landings work in OCS, which is not exactly designed around the type of air landing that we saw in Market Garden, where everybody drops in daylight in areas that they know are not going to be contested immediately upon landing. They're just not, they're not those kind of drops. So that's a problem, but there's also no reason to do anything like Market Garden. I think the best solution is to move the start of the scenario back 2 or 3 turns or whatever it would be, and have Market Garden has just happened, and now that is a situation that you, the allied player, have to figure out how to fix. That's where I would have started it, instead of like a week before Market Garden. Okay, so I mean, yeah, not a fan. I agree with that. All right, so as Brant has mentioned, I got to find the post. God damn it. All right, so I will be doing an OCS boot camp on at the Armchair Dragoons digital convention, but it is sold out. But it will be broadcast live on the channel too. So you if you didn't get a seat, don't worry about it. I'm not sure what John means here, but John is. I know John's played Beyond the Rhine, so. All right, and Patrick will be doing a tutorial for GCACW, so that's totally worth your time. 2 of my favorite systems. It's interesting, but you have there is no reason to try Market Garden, and it's up to the Germans to avoid the bulge or not. One can make the case that the mechanism, the German buildup mechanism for the bulge is a little artificial. I have some sympathy for that, but that doesn't really bother me. That's certainly not a huge problem. Road to the Rhine. I believe Compass is redoing this. I have no problem with the Allies needing to jump out and seize Antwerp. The problem is there's just too many places in OCS where such an attack could just completely get stuffed. And then there is no turn 2. You don't try it again. It's too late. You're not going to take Antwerp till December, right? And that's historically untenable. So, all right. Yeah, and I agree with this. There's counter density is well, okay, density is high, but I mean it's OCS, it's on the box. Warning, density high, right? So you haven't okay, so this is true, but the like official, not a errata as such, but suggestions from Roland says everybody enters fueled, and I think that will go along just that British situation in the first couple of turns. There's no time to stockpile fuel. You don't start with a big stockpile, so you just don't have enough to like get your guys to the front and actually fight with them. You don't have enough. Units entering fueled will go a long way toward remedying that. Let me put it that way. This is almost certain to be Smolensk. Andrew Cook. All right. So here's our report on the football game. I think we're doing exceptionally well tonight, considering we're up against the national championship game. Michigan up by 7, dominated first quarter. Good for them. I'll check it again at midnight. Okay. There's a lot to take apart out of Perfidious Albion's comment here. I think he's right. It says that ASL is basically an enormous sandbox for infantry combat World War II. Part of the strengths with a system that's been popular and around for so long is the sheer wealth of scenarios. Okay. So yes, that's true. But the I don't know. The other variable that you're not mentioning here, and I don't know that I think you're aware of this, is the like expertise pool with OCS as well. And what I mean by that is you've got like these players who've been playing it basically forever, who have completely internalized absolutely everything about it, and who therefore feel very comfortable designing their own stuff or doing any number of other things. RacerX1207, thank you for becoming, for joining as a patron, as a free patron, but that's okay. I don't mind. I don't even know what the number is here, Perfidious Albion, but I would estimate that you are right, regardless of whether you include third-party scenarios or not. So second front, I assume we're talking about Europa second front here. It could have this problem too. And in fact, I'm going to suggest that in this case, though, it's really scale that makes something like Market Garden. I don't know how interesting it would be. And I don't think its airborne landing rules are terribly satisfying. But this is pretty far from the biggest issue I have in Beyond the Rhine or second front. The issue with Beyond the Rhine is it starts on like the September 3rd turn or something like that. So maybe the 5th. So you've got it like start like on turn 3 or 4 maybe is when Market Garden historically happens. So there's very little time for you to like prepare for that. And they had prepared for that for months. In fact, in a number of different guises, they had prepared for that for months. So in Beyond the Rhine, Market Garden should be to capture a port in the Netherlands. So, I mean, you're going to have ports in the Netherlands, right? Capturing a port in the Netherlands is not that big of a deal. Capturing Antwerp is the big deal. And then you have to clear the estuary. And then that becomes a big deal. But you've got to grind that out, right? Monty's going to give it to the Canadians and not send them any bullets, right? As happened historically. So... All right. Mark Hodgkinson mentions back designing in third winter already build-ups is the most needed for our OCS game. So I guess I'll mention that there's some additional infrastructure built into third winter and to some extent Crimea as well that Tony really wanted for like higher level headquarters, for like army headquarters for the Germans and front headquarters for the Soviets. Those do a number of things. They add, I think, in an interesting way to the decision space, but they also ease the burden of pushing supply points around to some extent, right? All it really means is that the supply you get a front HQ, and that's where the supply comes in. So you don't have to truck it all in from the map edge anymore. You can just truck it in from wherever, the front HQ is, which could still be 20 hexes, right? Even longer in something like third winter, where you can end up having a very stretched out front. All right. So Todd Cox says he has 542 scenarios in his ASL collection. God damn it. I think I got more than that. I have 0 third-party products. I've done this too, but it doesn't do you any good because they land, they drop in move mode, even though the turns are 3 days. So you land, you drop in move mode, and you can't do shit except you sit there on the coast where you can still be supplied, and you can't really attack. They're good units, but by that point, the Germans might have too much stuff over there. So. As Doug points out, competitive play, this is a very delicate way to put it. Competitive play is huge in the ASL community. That is absolutely true. And I think this is true of more than any other war game. In the sense that, there's a lot of tournaments happening at, say, WBC, but like there's tournaments happening at ASL like every month somewhere, right? This is true too, but the game doesn't really reflect this. You need Antwerp. It's Antwerp is what affects the Allied supply situation until you take it and clear the estuary. So our local guys in Columbus actually played ATS not too long ago when I was not there. And they didn't hate it. So they said it felt a lot like Squad Leader. Big shock. Who considers John? I consider Korea it's one of my favorite ASL core modules because you bought it for me, so that's why. I tactical Korean. I haven't played any of those scenarios. Let me put it that way. I believe this to be true, and I do also think that this is one of the factors that has kept ASL. It's not really healthier than the rest of the hobby, but it sure felt like it was, right? I really feel like that is a huge factor for ASL. that competitive thing. It's an additional. Not everybody likes to play that way. I don't like to play that way, but for people who do like to play that way, this is an outlet for them, right? All right. So Vincenzo says among the OCS games he tried, Blitzkrieg Legend is the most historically interesting. So I feel like Blitzkrieg Legend, which I've also played, is probably the best game I have played on the France 1940 situation. And that is because the system rather naturally handles command efficiency in a somewhat abstracted way. And bear in mind, when we say command efficiency, we're also talking supply points in OCS. It very naturally handles that without intentionally nerfing or buffing one side or the other, which is a technique that's been used in a number of games handling that campaign in an unsatisfying way. So and I will also point out that there is a Netherlands map. It's a 2-map game, but there's also like a Netherlands map that's like a quarter-size map that you could play with or not. And if you don't, then it's a 2-map game. It's a really good game. It's also the worst die-cut OCS game I own, and I'm not sure if that's just my copy or what. Nature's Whisper, Vermont Strolls. Thanks for stopping by. The man, I really feel like there's a couple of things that I think explain the durability of ASL. I don't know if it's a throne, right? I mean, I don't know. I think it's probably the single most played war game. Let me put it that way. At least of like, war games, Grognard war games that even the hairiest grognard would agree are war games. I think one of those factors is the tournament situation, right? There's regionally a lot of like small events that might draw 20, 15, 20, 30, 40 people maybe, that are basically like a couple days of ASL tournament play. There's a bunch of those all over the country, right? The biggest one is right here in Cleveland, Ohio. That's Oktoberfest. That draws like 125 people or 150 people or something like that. And it's mostly tournaments, right? It's fairly competitive. I think that, like I mentioned, that competitive scene is a dimension of play that won't appeal to everybody, but to some people it really appeals to them, and they're not going to get that competitive play experience out of most war games, so they turn to ASL. Now, the other thing is ASL is very complicated. And I know that there's an idea that's been floating around in all the corners of gaming for some time that people hate complicated games. That idea, and I intentionally put it in the most reductive way I could, because it's obviously bullshit. If you look at any style of games, the popular games tend to be the complicated games. D&D has historically not been a simple game to play, right? It's much more complicated than many of its less successful competitors. If you look at RPGs all over the place, all of the like popular stuff that gets played at big conventions all the time, you'll have the Shadowrun room with 40 tables of I don't know if it's 40, but 20 plus tables of Shadowrun running simultaneously, and the Pathfinder room with 20 plus tables of Pathfinder running simultaneously, and a D&D room with 20 plus tables of D&D running. All of those are fairly complicated games. Okay. So this idea that maybe the newbie wants a simpler experience, that makes sense. But the notion that in general people prefer simpler games, I think is without support in data. I think there's also a dimension of play that some people like. Not everybody's going to be into this, of mastering the complicated rules. Okay. If you are, and I have some sympathy toward that. If you are into that, then you're going to be happy with ASL, because it'll take you a little while, right? So anyway, this is another factor too, right? You can get a ton of high quality ASL play in very small footprints. And in most cases, except in the big historicals, there's really no off map displays or anything like that. You got a scenario card, you got your map, which might be as small as 8.5 by 20 by 22. And that's it, right? And even if you got a 4-map game, right, that still takes up about the same amount of space as a regular 1-map war game might. So it's also very compact. It's easy to travel with. If I know I'm going to go to a buddy's house and play ASL and we're playing Germans and Soviets, well, probably I'm going to let him bust his stuff out. But beyond that, I can just bring the boards and the scenarios and the Germans and the Soviets and the markers, and that's it, right? I don't necessarily need to. And I know we go to Winterfest and we take pictures of the dude with this giant 8-foot tool cabinet that I don't know how he got this on an airplane, that he uses to store all this ASL stuff. That's his travel set, you understand. But that's totally unnecessary, man. You can fit absolutely everything in one game box, other than the rule book. You can take that ASL starter kit box and take take a whole day's worth of gaming, just stick it in the box and go, and that's it. So there's a portability element. There is a flexibility element because you can play big scenarios. There's probably scenarios that have 8 boards, but not very many, right? Most scenarios are 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 boards. So you just bring those. Ogre is probably a great introductory war game. All right, Eric Goebel, thank you so much. Much appreciated. Have a great night, and we will see you again soon. Professor Albion agrees with me. Well, so it's also, also understand that I'm not revealing anything here. Just, take into account ASL is also World War II, right? So it's the most popular topic in wargaming, right? It's squad level. It's kind of it has dominated the World War II tactical space to an extent that no other game has done since Squad Leader came out, right? And prior to that, it was Panzer Blitz. So, there's plenty of competition in that space, some of which are really pretty strong games in their own right? Lock and Load Tactical, pretty good game. Old School Tactical, pretty good game. These games are not like turds or anything compared to ASL, but ASL has continued to dominate. Now, part of that's momentum too, right? Because you have this community of people. This is these 120 people who show up in Cleveland, Ohio every year, play ASL for 8 days, right? No, not really. GMT, sure. No, not even GMT. I'm not buying this as a general conclusion. I'm not saying that this is a completely fictional phenomenon. Certainly this is happening in places, but most of our major wargaming publishers are really not bending over backwards to provide tons of exceptionally simple games to people. If you think about like the big popular games out of GMT, which is I think the publisher we're probably thinking of here, you get Twilight Struggle. That's not an incredibly light game. It's not super. None of these are that I'm going to name are super complicated, but they're not really that simple either. Commands and Colors is probably the simplest. Combat Commander is roughly, I think it's a little more complicated than Commands and Colors. The coin games are famously hard for people to get into. So clearly they're not incredibly simple either. Levy and Campaign, not that simple. So I think this is happening, but I think that we may feel like it's happening more than it's happening. You know what I'm saying? And as Tim Zales points out, the community, there's a number of ways to take this statement of it's the community. And one is that the community is super duper supportive and they're all great people and all that. And that may well be true. I haven't interacted with very many of those people in a long time. Or it may just mean that there is a community, right? That there are people who are gonna play this game with you, right? When I got back into wargaming, I was like, well, shit, I guess I'm playing ASL because I know that's still getting played, right? People see it. That's a big factor. All right, Jeff Miller says scenarios are like appetizers. Clearly, we have moved on from the topic here, Jeff. Sorry. I don't know that you missed anything terribly. I don't know that we haven't been incredibly on topic tonight, but hey, we're cross programming against the national championship. So what can I say? Marty cannot make winter offensive. That's unfortunate. Winter at Oktoberfest, it's maybe even crazier. Actually, there was a dude with this giant, like, I don't know, 5 foot tall wooden roller cabinet piece of furniture that he brought stuff in on. I don't know that he flew that in. That'd be crazy. But I'm like, man, this is not a travel set. Okay. That designer's edition of Ogre was indeed enormous. Okay, so Rudy Armendariz, welcome back to the show. First of all, Original Squad Leader was one of the first tactical games ASL built off of that. This is true, but I mean, one of the first. I mean that's true, but I think that's deceptive because remember that at the time, right? We're talking 77, and then Panzerblitz comes out in like 70 actually, if you count tactical game number 3. Then or whatever number tactical game it was. The output of games was way lower at the time, right? So while it's true to say it's one of the first tactical games, there's still like a period of several years of tactical games that happened before Original Squad Leader 2. So Patrick of Patrick's Tactics and Tutorials, thank you for stopping by. This is true. It's kind of its whole own thing, right? It's not just Vassal. It's got like a lot of its own stuff built for it. It is really strongly supported in Vassal, or whatever we're calling it. So if you are interested in Perfidious Albion, Doug just did I think this is the system you're talking about. Doug just did a video over at the Tabletop's Edge on this system. So watch that if you're interested, if you're not into it already. So I mean, I just think this is more perception than reality. Let me put it that way. Now, on the other hand, we do have individual publishers like, say, Worthington, that are predominantly doing fairly simple games. But I mean, we're not talking shoots and ladders here. Columbia's stuff has all been relatively simple, but man, Columbia's not killing anybody with sales. And let me tell you, I mean, I think I have a very high opinion of their products and the people and all that stuff. And it just seems like they're a company that gets lost a lot. I don't know why. Well, maybe that's more perception than reality as well. Renegade Games is redoing Squad Leader. Nobody's quite sure what that looks like yet, but it sounds like it's going to be Squad Leader and not some new thing that's not Squad Leader. Let me put it that way. I also wouldn't expect to see it this year. I'd expect to see it next year, the year after. Maybe I'm wrong about that. If Brant's still here, he may have more info. He actually talked to Renegade at Gamma. So this is another thing that we tend to think is a trend. That we are trending towards simpler games. I would make the case that I don't think Atlantic Chase is that simple of a game, right? It's just really well presented, and that makes a big difference. There have always been a mix of simple war games and complicated war games. SPI, the same people responsible for The Next War, pretty complicated, and Campaign for North Africa, infamously complicated. Lots of other city fight, firefight, lots of other stuff that are legendarily complicated games are also responsible for like the Blue and the Gray Quad that had like 4 pages of rules. So, they did a mix of things over the course of the time they were around. Avalon Hill that's true of Avalon Hill too, but by the time we get to like the mid 70s, we do start to see a less Avalon Hill really easy games, and at least in the war games, right? They were still doing really easy games. They were just doing like World of Spices and stuff like that. Yeah, it is almost as tactical as you can get. That's true. I've never tried to draw this particular analogy, but there's something to this. You could play. So Vincenzo says that ASL is a lot like D&D in this respect. You can play the first level and add rules. This is absolutely true. This is basically what the ASL starter kits do. They take out a few kind of core things, snipers, a bypass movement, and one or two other things. And then really all they're doing is just taking out extra complications, the complicated terrain and the complicated rules for night and airdrops and caves and, vehicles and ordnance and stuff like that. And then gradually drip dropping that stuff back in. Right. There's supposed to be, Stigler will have more insight on this than I do. There's supposed to be like a simple GBACW something coming. But I don't know that Stigler's involved in that directly necessarily. I have no problem with such a thing existing. I have reservations that I will want to play it because I will probably come at it exactly how I came at simple GBOH, which is ending up thinking that the regular game system is not that much less complicated and gives me more of what I want out of a game. It is plausible that will be the case with simple GBACW as well. I don't know. I'm happy to take a look at it. So Marty mentions that the majority of the games that Columbia has listed were 20 years old. They do have some newer stuff, right? The last Spike's just a few years old, and a lot of their stuff is older, frankly. Not all their stuff is incredibly ancient. They're still doing RPG stuff too. So I want to watch the video that Doug talks about this. Watch Doug's video over at the Tabletop's Edge. Renegade, well, this was obviously a bigger priority for them. Was a huge priority for them, in fact. So Neil Bedke says that, OSG were average in complexity. I'm not sure which OSG games we're talking about. And now that I'm playing, I'm going to have more to say about Library of Napoleonic Battles after we're a little further into it. I feel like we have erred in deciding we were going to play Napoleon's Last Gamble rather than something else. The problem with Napoleon's Last Gamble, it's not really a problem, it's just a lack of organization on the part of the person that owns the game, which is me, is that there's like a lot of extra stuff for Library of Napoleonic Battles. There's 3 expansions for that particular game, and they're all in the box, and the shit's all mixed together, and it's a kind of a hellish to figure out what stuff goes with what stuff. That's creating a noticeable drag on play. If we had just picked something like Wagram or something, just played that, we'd have been better. All right, so apparently there was a snafu with that video. I did not know that. Wasn't there some noise about somebody's doing BattleTech. I forget the publisher of BattleTech right now, but BattleTech's still around. Somebody's picked, Shadowrun's still around, and Earthdawn is still around. I'm not sure who the publisher of Earthdawn is. And a few of the the FASA things are floating around at these points. I thought there was some kind of noise about somebody redoing Renegade Legion. Now, I'm going to point out that at one point, I think Stigler and I might have talked about me taking his Fighting Wings games off his hands for him, and I ended up saying no on that. And I hope Stigler is happy with them, but I am not that into air games. I've got a few, and I feel like I've got enough, right? This is a pretty deep end of the pool for air combat games, and I just don't feel like I need that. Somebody in, Doug's a pilot. He's damn well going to be into that. That makes complete sense. So I completely sympathize with this. I would generally rather play the campaigns, but the real life's got to take precedence too. I have a lot of opinions on how one could modernize the presentation and delivery of ASL product. Let me put it that way. Oh, there we go. There you go. I think I did know that. I think Doug mentioned it in his video. I think that's what it is. So I agree. This is where I point people if they're trying to figure out BCS. Is go watch these videos. They're not really instructional, but they will give you an excellent sense. They'll give you a good sense of the mechanics and a very good sense of like overall flow. Catalyst Game Studios, yeah, I believe they're doing they're who's doing Shadowrun as well. It's basically FASA. This is true. There's no real need to buy all that extra ASL stuff. Now, that said, if they do Doomed Battalions is the last core module that I need, and I will be happy to do that. I ask about this like once every 18 months, and they keep telling me there is no plans to reprint it at this time, which doesn't mean no. It just means that they're not talking about it. So, all right. BattleTech seems. I felt like BattleTech was clunky back in the day. I played BattleTech like the first edition of BattleTech that I had. That's the only one I've ever owned, actually. And I felt like this doesn't really feel right to me. I don't know. It's giant robots. We should like that. I wasn't super duper into it. So, the Doug also explains in his video the whole buffalo wings thing, where there was like a buffalo wings and then a buffalo wings with blue cheese or something. I forget, but something like that. John Madison, thanks for stopping by. We don't see you on the stream in the next couple of weeks. We'll see you in person in not much more than a month, so about 5 weeks. I have all of the ASL starter kit stuff except for, well, not the magazine scenarios, but except for one of the scenario packs. I forget which one it was. Beyond the Beachhead, I think, is the one that I don't have. And like, oh well, I don't have it. I've got Elst. I've got all four. I've got a bunch of magazine scenarios. I just don't have all of them. So I got Hatton on pre-order, so like I said, I feel like the only ASL thing I need is a new version of Doom Battalions, because mine is an Avalon Hill version, and then that Twilight of the Reich I might buy. I haven't pushed the button yet, but I might buy that. We'll see. I haven't really looked at any of the Catalyst versions of Shadowrun. I'm not sure why they are bad, but I can tell you that my game that we're in, which is about to wrap up, I expect that next weekend, this Friday will be the final session. There might be one more, but I expect this Friday will be the final session of that Shadowrun game. Oof. That no more need be said, right? The historicals I have Hatton, I have Red Factories, and I have Festung Budapest. That's all I have. I'm good. I'm unless you do another Stalingrad one, I might buy. I'm pretty good on that. Charles Lenny asked about good operational level sci-fi near future games. So if by near future we're talking about like the Next War series from GMT, those are operational and those are pretty solid. But like more on the sci-fi end of that, operational sci-fi is something we have seen very little of. We've seen some strategic stuff and we've seen a decent amount of tactical stuff over the years. No, we're not. The market isn't exactly buried in this stuff. Operational, not so much. One could maybe make a case that SPI's Star Force or Battlefleet Mars are operational. Maybe. I've never owned Battlefleet Mars. It's another one that's on the list of things to get. We definitely need some water here. Now, up until they may still have these, I don't remember. The BattleTech pods. You used to be able to go to what's that damn arcade place? but Origins had them. They have like 6 or 8 BattleTech pods there that you could sit down and play. It's neat. But it's the kind of thing you can just do at home now. So I you know, the attraction of the BattleTech pods is somewhat lessened now than it used to be. Oh, absolutely. We got usually my wife loves the Ardwulf's Lair pint glass. So I usually don't get to have it with me on stream. I would call Fifth Frontier War. I think you could make a case for operational. Imperium, I would call strategic. Pandemic, Star Wars, the Clone Wars. I don't know if that's 3 games or 1 game or what that is, so I can't even tell you. There is an Expanse game. It's by Jeff Engelstein. I've heard it's dry. Renegade so the whole Renegade Legion was like 5 or 6 different linked games, and it was actually pretty neat when you kind of got the whole thing there. Fed and Empire is operational. I don't know. I haven't played Fed and Empire, so I have it. It's been a long time goal to play Fed and Empire, and I do think it will happen. It's just I have no concrete plans to do it at the moment. I've heard it described as coin-like. I'm not sure. I think coin-like is probably about right. Some people have said it's a coin game. It's not a coin game, but it's coin-like. And I'm just going by what I've heard here. I might be wrong about this. I love I've read all the books, but the last 3, and I loved the show. I'd be delighted to play it, but there's an RPG from Green Ronin too. Dave and Buster's is the arcadey type place that you can go as a grown-up and play arcade games again. So Marty's got an opinion on this. This could be intriguing. A reskin PAX Pamir. All I know about it is it looks reasonably okay, and the Expanse game, that is, and that I've watched a couple videos on it, so that's it. Hey, I'll have the table space, right? Oh, I mean, this is just a huge project, right? Fed and Empire is like a huge project. When we had people playing Fed and Empire at Winterfest, it was literally, I think, 6 people. Maybe it was even 8, but I thought it was 6. It was 6 people sitting around the tables, all of them with laptops. I'm not sure there's a 4th faction, actually. This is part of the reason I'm attracted to Red Dust Rebellion, because we're going to be able to kind of get that same sort of experience without necessarily being beholden to the IP. All right, folks, it is 10 p.m. We are out of time. This has been a successful show, despite the technical difficulties that we had, all of which were fortunately prior to the show. So I want to remind everybody to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. There's a bunch of ways to support the channel, including Patreon and other stuff, in the video description. Reminder that I will be at the Armchair Dragoons digital convention for Saturday. I don't forget when it is, but go check the website out. The whole schedule's on the Saturday thing. And also, don't forget the Noble Knight Games affiliate link, which is your gateway to supporting the channel and buying games, and everybody's happy. And like I said, sometime in the next, I might not do this till March, but we'll see where we are. We'll see where we are on the quest to obtain a copy of Campaign for North Africa. That's not the only game on that list, by the way. There's at least 3 or 4 other SPI classics that are otherwise probably not things I'm willing to buy. So I'd like to thank everybody for especially choosing to watch this show instead of the boring football game and the depressing fact that Michigan's probably going to win. So thanks for coming out here. So we will be back Thursday. So the Chit Show will be tomorrow. Shit, I haven't got a guess. That might be me and Dan tomorrow, and then we will probably have an unboxing, which might end up being Legrand Guerre on Thursday. But we'll try and I got to edit. It's a little bit messy. So there'll be some more videos this week, and more shorts will be coming as well. So everybody have a great rest of the night, and we'll see you all next time.